One of the most common issues that baby crested geckos face is stuck shed. If you can look here, there's a little bit of stuck shed on the belly and on the legs of this little gecko. So we're gonna help it get rid of all its stuck shed. That way it doesn't constrict the limbs and possibly cut off the circulation, and then we have to amputate the limbs. So this is a super important issue, and this is something that every gecko owner should know how to deal with. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get this little guy into a deli cup with some humidity and some moisture. We want it almost very wet. That way the skin that's just like laying around is actually gonna get humid and it's not gonna break easily, and it's gonna be easier to pull off without it breaking. So first things first, I'm gonna go ahead and mist this, get it nice and wet, and then I'm gonna put my little guy in there. I may even give him a little bit of a spray. And we're gonna leave them in here for about, like 15 minutes or so. And we're gonna come back here and take off that shed very, very carefully. But real quick, I wanna show you some of the other Asiatic geckos that we have hatched lately. So let's go do that. Alright guys, so in the past couple weeks, we have hatched a couple different types of Asiatics. The one you saw just a couple of seconds ago is a Phantom Asiatic, which is the most common. This right here is a Flame Asiatic, and this guy actually has perfect head structure. You can see this little guy is just so cute, and the Asiatics just stick out like a sore thumb when they hatch out. I want to show you the different varieties that we also hatched. That is the Flame Asiatic. This right here is a Harlequin Asiatic, which just means it has the flame pattern down the back, but a little bit more pattern on the sides and the limbs. Now, Asiatics tend to fade a little bit as they get older, but some of that white will definitely stay. Now, how much of the white will stay and how much will it go, we don't know until it grows, but you can see that these little guys here are just so cute. They just, they're unlike any other crested gecko morph. They're super, just like monochrome gray color, and when they fire up quite dark, almost pitch black. So this is a really exciting morph to work with, especially when you start to pair it up with things like the lily white or any of the high white animals. And guess what? We actually hatched out an Asiatic lily white that I'm going to show you right now. Alright, so to my surprise, last night, I came into the gecko house and my brother had told me we hatched out an Asiatic lily white. Now this little guy here is a Phantom Asiatic lily white. So Phantom and Asiatic are both recessive mutations, and the lily white is an incomplete dominant. So this is a triple gene animal, such a cool little lizard right here, and it took me a long time to hatch one of these out. I know they're all over the place in Korea now, and a lot of breeders have hatched these guys out, but this is a first for me. So I am super excited to actually hatch one of these out and to grow it out, and I'm probably gonna keep it just because it's my first. I can't wait to actually start working with this morph even more. Alright guys, so when helping a gecko with its stuck shed, especially such a small tiny little gecko, I'm gonna use three main tools. Some tweezers, some small little scissors for your little nose hairs, and a Q-tip. Now I like to wet one side of the Q-tip because it's gonna help have the skin stick on it. You'll see what I mean. Luckily I don't really suffer too many incidents of stuck shed anymore, but I know a lot of you may run into this problem, so I wanted to show you how I do it when there is a problem. Now stuck shed, if you catch it early, it's gonna be a lot easier to get rid of, but if you wait too long, it'll start building up, it'll start constricting, and it can actually lead to the gecko having to have the arm amputated. It could lead to the gecko missing fingers or anything like that. So now that the gecko has been in here for about 15 minutes, we're gonna attempt to take off that extra shed. Now most of the extra shed is in the belly, and honestly, it's not constricting anything, so if I were to leave it, probably it would rub off on some of the substrate or anything in the enclosure. But since I want to show you guys how I do this, I'm gonna grab this little guy like this. I'm gonna start off with the tweezers. I just basically want to lift up a little flap of that excess skin. So right here, this is perfect. I could actually pinch this and start pulling back gently. If you pull it back too fast, it's actually just gonna rip off. And if you do it when it's dry, it's just gonna rip off as well, and it's not gonna come off in one piece as nice as this. So I like to work my way up like this, You know, I'll readjust. And sometimes, you know, a small gecko like this is a pain in the butt to do, and you might need 2 people. But I have a little bit of experience, so I'm just gonna make sure that, you know, I get all of this off. So you see there's some of that stuck shed right there. Sometimes what I'll do also is I'll pull that skin back, and then with the wet side of the Q-tip, I'll just go underneath and start rolling it like this, and that will kind of like peel the skin back, and it's, you know, less risky because you're not gonna pinch the gecko. But for certain areas like this one here, you're gonna want to get tweezers because it's just a little bit harder to do that with the Q-tip. So as you can see, I got the skin right here. I'm just trying to pull it off, and you want to kind of pull off the same way as if the gecko was shedding. If you pull the opposite way, it's just gonna rip up easier. So you want to be very careful so you don't pinch the gecko, and you're gonna take off all this little extra skin. I know it could be very tedious, but trust me, if you do this earlier, it's gonna save you some headache. Sometimes the little gecko will try to readjust, and that's fine. It takes a little bit longer sometimes. And if you look here on the arm, it has a little bit of the stuck shed here on this arm. And what I'm gonna try to do is just basically lift it up a little bit with the tweezers, and then either pull it off or roll it off with the Q-tip. Especially if you're working with a small gecko, guys, you may want to give it a couple little breaks, because believe it or not, small geckos can overheat real quick from your body temperature. But you can see I'm pulling this off right here, and just like that, it's gonna come off. Just getting this off right here. I'm sorry. Yeah, when he moves like that, it's gonna rip off, but I got most of it out. There's a little bit on its back leg there. So sometimes you could do it all with the tweezers, but I do like to use these other tools if I need to. I'm mostly gonna use the little scissors very, very carefully if it's something that's already constricting, like the arm or the tail of the gecko. So what I'll do is I'll basically go underneath the skin like that, and then clip it. That way, you know, because sometimes they'll be like constricting the limb like this. So you just want to clip it, and then that way you could easily pull it off. Because sometimes it just gets, you know, it's too hard to just do it with the tweezers. Sometimes you may be even able to do it with your finger just like this. And if you work slowly, you know, you could get some of that stuff off pretty easily. But if you pull it fast, it's just gonna break. And you don't want it to stay on the feet too long, because it will constrict the digits. So I'm right there. Look at that. That's perfect. And that is, if I didn't take this off, it might have, you know, constricted the toes, and it could even lose toes in the future. So it's really important that you get this done, especially with your babies. If you haven't dialed in your humidity to a T, this might happen to you. And it honestly, even when you do have your humidity you know, dialed in, it still kind of happens from time to time with babies. I never really see this issue with an adult. If you see shedding issues with an adult, you have to be careful, because typically when you see shedding issues with an adult, either the husbandry is really bad, or the adult that has shedding issues might be getting bullied by another adult. That's a very common thing that a lot of people don't know. So let's try to get this last piece off. And that's why it's good to have like a little table underneath in case the gecko jumps off. But right there. I know this is probably hard to catch on camera, but I'm doing my best to kind of show you guys. Right there. Okay, here's another little piece. And again, this is not the worst case of stuck shed that I have seen by any means, but it is really important to get this done, because you don't want your little animal to lose a toe. I gotta kind of concentrate here. And yeah, guys, just like that, that's how you fix some stuck shed in your crested geckos. Same applies to gargoyle geckos or whatnot. You know, if you're having a hard time the first go around, don't worry. Sometimes I have to do this, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 times if it's really bad. And eventually, you know, the stuck shed will start to come off. And, you know, once it sheds again, the little pieces that didn't come off, it might just come off on that next shed. Now another little trick that we do here, if a gecko is suffering from too much stuck shed issues, if you see your babies have a lot of stuck shed issues, what you could do is add a little bit of Pedialyte to your food, about 2-part Pedialyte to 8-part water to the food, and that just hydrates the gecko to make sure that it's not stuck shed from a dehydration issue. So those are my tricks, guys. If you have any other tricks that you guys use to get stuck shed off of these geckos, you know, comment them down below. I know some people use those rubber fingers that you use to count money and to kind of like push it back. That is also a great way to do it, but this is how I do it. Let me know what you guys do in the comments. Thank you guys for watching so much. If you want to see some other tips and tricks on how to get your baby crested geckos to eat crickets, make sure you click on this video right here. And for now, that is it, and we'll see you guys on the next one.